Oh, hi there. We're glad you're watching one of our virtual lunch presentations. We have a lot of good information that we've been accumulating over the past several years, and we invite you to look down just below here and hit the subscribe button, and the little bell will give you a reminder of when our next presentation is published here on the YouTube channel. Thanks for your support. Appreciate it. Today, we're happy to have Kintronic Labs as our sponsor. Kintronic Labs is really I didn't get to the NAB show, but I know that one of the busy booths, one of the places where you saw lots and lots of people was Kintronic Labs with the guys there. Tom King, his son, now is taking over, and that's all good. These guys have been going since 1949, and whatever you need in the way of AM directional materials and even FM, dummy loads and combining coax switches, weatherproof cabinets, combiners, they're there, and they are anxious to help out with whatever your needs are. And now, of course, the thing that's really neat is if you notice, they now have a page where you can order in the middle of the night if you have to, equipment, and it'll be delivered to you. And they've got vacuum caps up there, and they're slowly going to be adding more and more to that. Well, it's the first Thursday of the month, and I'm always gladdened to see Jeff's smiling face, because Jeff gives us an insight on things from that viewpoint that is very helpful from the weeks. It seemed like weeks you were in Las Vegas, didn't it, Jeff? And but the days that he was on the floor and the things that he introduced and saw. And we have some other folks here that were at the show. And so what we want to do is have Jeff, first of all, and I see Matt has joined us. We want to talk about what the new Nautel VX series and the AUI, where that stands. So many people want to know the answers to those questions. So over to you, Red Leader One.
So I'm going to defer totally Matt on this. I just got back from NAB. Let's see, a week ago today, I was sitting on an airplane. So it's it's been intriguing. We'll talk a little bit about that, because getting back from NAB was probably harder than being there in a lot of ways. But I'm going to pass straight over to Matt and let him talk about the VX launch, which we did live from my hotel room in the Tuscany, with him sitting at the computer desk and me at the kitchen table. So, you know, one of the most high-tech product launches we've ever done. But it was a lot of fun, so I'll let Matt handle it for a bit.
Sure.
Hi, Matt.
Hi there. How you doing?
Good to see you.
Good. So let's jump right in. So it's very exciting to have launched a new product, and the VX line is our new analog FM focused range that goes from 150 watts up to 5 kilowatts. They're going to be released in 2 phases. The first phase is up to 2 kilowatts, which is a 2 RU unit, in 6 different models, and that'll come out. That'll be available for shipping by the end of the year. You can place orders now, of course, but and then the up to 5 kilowatt, which is 3, 3.5, 4, and 5 kilowatt models, will be available in the first quarter of next year, calendar next year. I have to say that I'm fighting allergies, and so I'm a little groggy through lack of sleep last night. So apologies if I'm a little woolly on my responses. So
you got the COVID.
No, I've been testing like a crazy thing every day since I got back. So anyway, yeah, so it's super exciting. The launch at the NUG went really well. We had Etienne, who's one of the lead designers, sort of present it there, and that was exciting to have someone with all the technical depth to be right by my side. And then we also had Justin, who joined Etienne a couple of days later, to be on the show floor and talk about it directly and all the details inside the box. And we had a couple of display units which have clear plastic tops on them. So those are going on the road. So you might get to see one of those in your local area at some point. But that lets you see the very clean layout with the new solderless PA pallets. We use an SD card for all the brains instead of the soldered on thing, so you can pop that out, make a copy of it, and have a backup of your whole setup. Very easy to work on, just uses a Phillips screwdriver to sort of pull the whole thing apart. And the power supply for the main power supply pops right out of the front, and we're using I think what we call a titanium grade power supply from ABB. So it's a super high quality one, very reliable. Same thing on the front. We've got the fans, and those have a nice little washable filter, and you just pop off 4 screws, wash it, throw it back on again. So the ranges goes from it's 150, 300, 600, 1, 1.5, and 2 in the 2RU unit, and so that's a pretty exciting range there. You can pick what meets your needs, and your local salesperson can give you pricing and all that kind of good stuff. And of course, it will be running the new AUI, and so I can use that maybe to transition across to talking about the new AUI for a little bit, and then if we've got questions specifically about the VX series, we can come back to that too. So the new AUI, I'm just putting the final touches to the beta 2.1 for the VS. It's been held up, as you know, as you can tell, basically because in beta 2 we realized that we had an installation issue, and if you were to try and do the install on an older system, then it could cause trouble. So we've spent a lot of time in development to figure out a way to avoid trouble. And so that's good. And we've also been working on other little fixes along the way. The development of the AUI is now running in parallel, obviously with VX as part of it, and also the GV version as well. So we're seeing all the instruments, all the features are done. So, and now it's just the bug hunting from the top to the bottom. We realize that all of these, the AUI is a mission critical tool for remote access and control. So foisting something of low quality on you would be very unpopular. So we're avoiding that and working very hard. I have the latest beta running up on my system here on the VS that's actually on the wall behind me, and that seems to be rock solid, and so I'm pretty pleased with that. The demos that we did on the floor, the general feedback from everyone was really positive. I think the biggest downside, which I have to address, whether I like it or not, is on the VS, the audio player is a challenge. We don't have an audio driver for the version of Linux that we're running, which is a modern one, which allows us to do HTML5. So at this point, we have a challenge ahead of us in terms of getting an audio player, audio driver up and running so that we can have the audio player. Otherwise, what you'll see in the new AUI is virtually feature for feature a copy of the old AUI, the Flash one. Different styling. You've seen the demos. I've been here before, but we've managed to nail down all the instruments and things like that. So, so that's pretty exciting. And then we'll be rolling these out over the year. So I expect to see within the next couple of months the VS one go to general availability. We're going to have a phased release because there's 7,000 7,000 plus VS transmitters, and so we don't want to slam our web servers and things like that. So we're going to do this nice and gently. Part of the new AUI is a new version of Phone Home. So Phone Home is like having someone from our support team looking over your shoulder and checking up on your transmitter. It if you decide to connect it, which we encourage people to do so because the value is pretty high, it feeds data up into an Amazon Web Services cloud server. And so there are two things that can do for you. One is proactive support. So if we see something bad happening, we're going to get a hold of you and say something bad's happening. In the other side of things is that if you've got a question about something that happened a little while ago, then you can call us and our techs can log into their dashboard for the Phone Home and have a look at your data. And if you've told us the exact geographical location, we'll drop a pin on a map and we will collect weather data as well alongside of that. So we'll be able to correlate weather data with things that may be going on. So we can look at your history of meters that we've gathered. We can go back, take a look at that and go, well, you know, it was 50 degrees in the hut. Not a surprise. So those are that's probably the highlights. I think we got a bunch of questions. I'm going to just sort of go back. I'll open up the chat here and take a look. And Jeff pointed out we archived the launch webinar for VX, and the link is in the chat. And the scheduler is, the question was whether we got the scheduler to work from year to year with different data. We've talked about that, and I'm not quite sure of the answer to it, but the scheduler is a ground up rewrite of the scheduler. So, but it does have to talk to the old hardware. So I'll double check on that one. So I don't have, so that's I don't know for that one. If we put the new AUI GV20 HD, do we have to do any redo? Yes, you do. The new AUI has a different data architecture, and as a result, by definition, SNMTP, their MIBs and OIDs are all going to change. So we will publish those, and basically as soon as I have them to publish, I will be making sure that not only you get them, but also people like Burke and WorldCast, anyone else that's consuming them, Davacom, and so on.
I've posted the URL from your previous discussion of the AUI in the new feature.
Yeah, so I just saw that pop up. That's great.
So that's you.
And then will Phone Home data be directly available to users? So not in the first version of it, but it's a good question because it's something that we're certainly considering. It would be like a subscription-based thing where you could have access to a dashboard of your own and be able to have what you describe here as a consolidated view of your sites. So yeah, that's something that we're thinking about doing. We have to run the numbers and come up with what makes sense as far as a subscription is concerned, because obviously it's costs a lot to store that kind of level of data. But the system was designed to support that, and so yeah, it should be pretty interesting as we move forward. More questions. I probably glossed over horribly. You know, that's a 5-minute demo of VX and AUI, which is probably reprehensible of me. But happy to take any questions on both of them.
One of the questions that has been forwarded on the VX, this will or will not run HD?
It will not. It's an analog FM focused product, and the reason for that, and it's a very popular question. The reason for that is that when we were looking at different projects to do, we realized that this was there was an opportunity with a particular chipset that we found that really was just knocked it out of the park with regards to performance for analog FM, and that that trying to get it to work in a way that we would be proud of with HD was going to be a nightmare. And so we decided to focus on the essentially providing a really awesome analog FM unit that would be very popular worldwide, so that will be exciting. We're always thinking about what we're going to do next for all the different streams, so we'll be thinking about HD as we move forward. The other comment about the VX systems is that the higher power ones, the 3.5, 4, and 5, that's a 2-box unit, and so that's I think it's a total of 6 RU, and that has an exciter controller and then a power amplifier. And each one of those units, I think the power amplifier is about 50 pounds and the top unit is maybe about 15. And the power amplifier, if you've taken the thing, so you've taken the power supplies out of it, which then means that it's feasible and reasonable for a solo person to be putting these into a rack. So it's a rack mount system. And so the idea is that we've broken these apart for maintainability, getting into the box, and secondly, for physically putting them into the rack. And Elaine has asked about a YouTube video with Justin doing a walkthrough on the VX. He was a rock star at NAB, and I did do a video, and I just sent those over to our graphics person to be cleaned up, and that will be on YouTube, I guess, in the next little while. So he did a presentation of that. Then, is the FM generated using direct digital synthesis? I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe Jeff can do that. And I'll just finish the question. Is the AUI indication of total modulation about as accurate as a modulation monitor? Again, I'm not quite sure. I'm sorry, I'm more marketing than technical guy. So if I had Justin here, he would answer these questions. Jeff, do you happen to know the answers to that?
I absolutely do.
Oh, good.
Yeah, no, so the exciter, I guess you could call it direct digital synthesis. It's direct to channel. It's a computer chip. Basically, the audio goes in and the modulated FM comes out. So not a lot of difference, really. I mean, it doesn't require nearly as many parts as a typical DDS synthesizer, which we have built in the past. I think almost everybody's doing direct to channel now and just creating the FM signal in a processor. It's a whole lot cleaner and a whole lot easier. And you've got a lot more ability to add stuff like RDS and things like that. So yeah, it's a direct to channel. The AUI mod monitor. Oh, see, I told you I was shell shocked. But the mod monitor on it should be just as accurate as any factory mod monitor, maybe even a little more so, because on the VX, the directivity of the power probe is so huge that it's arguably the best power probe we've ever had in a product. So that's more for power metering, but it means you are going to get the cleanest possible signal too. So that helps.
There you go.
Power supply in the VX, I can handle that too. I'm on a roll here. So the power supply in the VX, there are two different power supplies. It changes at about, I'm going to screw
600.
this. Thank you, because we doubled the power amps up at 1500 or 12 kilowatt, and we changed power supply at 600. The low power one
might be one.
What's that?
Might be one. I'm doubting myself now, but anyway, carry on.
Anyway,
there's a break point.
So there are two specific power supplies used. They're both based on the same model, but one is a lower current. They're both variable voltage supplies. We've got enough volume now that ABB will actually custom build product for us, which is, it's a good thing, bad thing. It's a good thing because it means we've got a lot more flexibility to keep the cost down, and that means keeping your price down. It's a bad thing because it means if we customize it, it's not as much off the shelf anymore. Now, that said, the UG132, the one we use in all the GVs and NV lights, is used in the higher power iteration of the VX. So yeah, there is a lot of interchangeability in there. And that's something that, I mean, we didn't do it in the amplifier because we gained a couple of points in efficiency with the new amplifier FET that Matt was talking about. But where we can, we try to keep consistency and interchange it. Keeps our parts counts down. It keeps our quantity discounts higher, and it gives you guys a lot more flexibility.
Another point that was made by someone, it was Justin, but the efficiency of the new power supply means that that you can run up to the 1 kilowatt, including the 1 kilowatt from the regular 120 volt AC supply, which is pretty cool. And you can run the 2 kilowatt one, albeit at a decreased power level. You can also run that one from the 120 volt, which gives you some options and flexibility.
Well, and the cool thing is, so if you've got a 220 volt supply with a split phase feed and you lose one line for whatever reason, you're not off the air. It will still make some power.
Right.
Let's see. Richard asked if phone home data will store if you routinely purge your alarms, and the answer is yes, because the data is stored remotely on our servers, not yours. So it absolutely will keep that data. As Matt said, the long-term goal, and we've had a lot of discussion about how this will work, so it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. The long-term goal was to have the base level phone home the same as it's always been, where we get the alarms, we get a little red light, you call in, we've got the ability to see your alarm and get into your transmitter and help you troubleshoot it. After that, the goal going forward is to add tiered features, which will probably be subscription, or there'll be some cost to them, where you can log in and access all the data and do it yourself to provide more self-help. Or we do the proactive version where we see a red light, we call you, say, hey, your transmitter's under warranty, there's a power supply on the way, just want to let you know there's a red light lit. So a lot of that will depend on what you folks think you want and what you tell us you want. But we'll throw out some things to begin with, and we'll sort of figure it out as we go. Because at the moment, nobody that I'm aware of is offering proactive support like that. I mean, and I know that the folks over at Acresso have a pretty good version of their own version of phone home. So we're trying to kind of jump, well, I guess it's fair to say we're trying to leapfrog ahead a little bit.
And I think one of the big differentiators for phone home versus other monitoring systems is that we're not using SNMTP. We're using an API that we've designed. So this API is something that we can expand as we wish. It already transfers more information than basic SMTP.
Simple network mapping protocol.
Yeah, I'm reading anyway. So the point being that we have the ability to get a lot more information from the transmitter, and interestingly, in non-emergency mode, only a certain set of data is transferred up. The really critical alarms and things like that are sent up to the cloud. And then if something bad happens or there's critical alarms, that data set, also when it's on with RF on, that data set actually increases, and so you get a broader set of data being sent up to the cloud. So there's some pretty interesting capabilities there, and we're not doing this cold, because one of the development teams that was involved with it, they've done this kind of thing before for other units. So this is it's a pretty interesting solution. So we're excited about the prospects for it.
Yeah. Now, Kenneth also asked me in a direct, what's the latest on NV series power supply modules, and don't mind putting that on the record too. So the UG69s that were used in the NV series, as we know, they since Tektronix decided not to make them anymore, or CUI did after they bought Tektronix. There's a long litany of things that happened. Anyway, so they're less available, to put it bluntly. We have just entered into an agreement with a company on the East Coast that will do repairs. The repairs are not what I would call inexpensive. We also have the option where we can provide an adapter jig, and then you'll be able to use the current model UG132s that we use in everything else. And that's a little more expensive, but the adapter's a one-time thing, and that puts you up to current. It also gains you a couple of points in efficiency with the new supplies. So, you know, a lot of it's going to come down to your budget, your failure rates, and what you see going on. But we do have some options now, whereas even 2 weeks before NAB, we really didn't. So things have moved forward a lot there. Side note, although it hasn't been asked, the VS series also used the UG69. And as of about 3 days ago, there is now a field upgrade to allow you to replace the power supply interface circuit board in those and plug in the UG132 for those as well. So again, we're, you know, just because you bought the transmitter, we're not going to drop you in the street. It's, you know, the long-term support. Ken asked me NV versus VX at 5 kilowatts. Efficiency wise, the VX is pushing 75%, so you gain a couple percentage points, not a lot. But the VX, like Matt said earlier, is about 6 rack units high compared to a 6 foot tall rack. So, you know, and also the VX5, when you take the power supplies out, the amplifier cabinet weighs 50 pounds, so it's a much easier single person lift, even than a VS 2.5, which weighed pushing almost 70 pounds. And as I get a little older, lifting 70 pounds above my head is less likely to happen. Let's put it that way.
It's probably a bad idea.
Yeah. Now, mind you, I'm not going to put 75 pounds in there, 70 pounds in the top of a rack either, unless I've got the thing bolted to the floor. But that's a whole different argument.
What about cost?
That, I think, sums up the question.
Say again?
What's that?
What about cost difference between the two if you need a 5 kilowatt?
So the VX above 3 kilowatts, the 3, 3.5, 4, and 5, I don't have pricing yet. They're still finalizing the physical design. Until they know all the parts, they don't know the cost. Until they know the cost, I can't tell you what it sells for. I can tell you that the goal is to make it significantly less than the NVLT, or at least noticeably less. So yeah, it'll be less expensive and smaller. Beyond that, I can't tell you how much. I can tell you that on the 2 kilowatt level, we've gone down, just looking at the list price, about $3,000 from what the VS was. So yeah, it's going to be less, but I don't know how much. Give me a couple more months. I've already started. I just told Matt that every time somebody asked me that question, I was going to send him an email. So there goes another one.
Thank you.
Keeping the pressure on him, man. With this brain fog, he's going to have to deal with it.
Yeah.
All right. Other than that, NAB, I told somebody, I said, NAB, I love the show, but you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30, you spend the first hour dealing with all the urgent emails that came in because Halifax is 4 hours ahead. So they get a head start on filling my inbox. Then you sometimes grab a bite to eat. I usually pour a coffee. You get to the show floor, you spend the next, 11 hours on the show floor. Then you're out to customer or dinner with customers. Get back to your room about 9 or 10 p.m. and work until 1 a.m. doing all the emails that you didn't do during your day job, and sleep 4 hours, lather, rinse, repeat for 10 days. Come home, and I got home Friday at 6 p.m. I forced myself to stay up for a little bit. The Fitbit registered no sleep Thursday night. Red eye flights will do that to you. Yeah. And so then I get home Friday night. I stayed up till my normal bedtime, went to bed, got up at about 4 o'clock in the morning because my brain had no idea what was going on. Went to bed at 8 o'clock Saturday night and slept till noon Sunday.
Perfect.
So I'm almost in the right time zone. And fortunately, unlike Matt, I don't have to deal with allergies. So that's a good thing because that dry desert area. Oh, yeah. And we did. So this, oh, by the way, that handsome lad on the right is Adam Middlecoop, one of our support guys. We put the support guys in easily identifiable shirts so they know to throw the tomatoes not at me. But regardless, Adam was a rock star too, because he kind of got dragged into this cold. But we did do our TTT session live from the show floor. It did not record, and given the quality of the audio, that's probably a good thing. I suspect I screwed something up, but we also, at the end of the show, pitched the presentation laptop into a nice round receptacle. And actually, we didn't. We brought it home so IT could properly dispose of it. But let's just say that computer will never be used again. Harold asked any COVID cases. And so I can tell you flat out from the crew that we had on our booth, we got about a 20% positivity rate on the returns. From the folks in the neighboring booth, I know it was higher. So yeah, if I had to guess, a quarter to a third, all the people that went to NAB just on that very limited sample probably came back with COVID. I think pretty much it's part of our lives now.
A super spreader or a...
That's a fair way of putting it. I mean, it's so funny because Canada, we still have mandatory masking and everybody tries to, well, I say mandatory. I mean, here in Halifax or Nova Scotia, we don't anymore. They dropped that March 21st. But as Elaine says, almost nobody had their masks on at the show. And a few people, the funny thing is, one of our guys who is quite rigorous about masking is one who came back positive. So, you know, it's when you're bumping elbows with 54,000 people and shaking hands and haven't seen anybody in a long time, yeah, it was going to happen.
Richard wants to know if you're going to have a custom VX rack as an option.
That's a good question for Matt. And I've had...
I don't think it's necessary. This fits in a standard rack, and it doesn't require rails like the or it's not designed to have rails the same way that the VS does. That was something that customers had kind of complained about. So the unit just slides right in and it works. It hangs right off the ears on either side of the rack, the front panel. And so that it works quite well that way.
I guess the question is really the weight of it. Is it going to be something simple to mount in the rack, or do you need a shelf or rails?
No, it's totally designed for front mounting.
Yeah, up to 2 kilowatts. That unit is 2 RU. It mounts from the 4 bolts that go through the front panel, and it weighs 24.5 pounds. All in, soaking wet.
And for what it's worth, they did go with 1/8" aluminum on the front instead of the lighter gauge stuff. Yeah. So yeah, it's and actually it's about a pound less for the under 1 kilowatt, where they've only got 1 power amplifier.
Right, and on that you've got a fairly thick aluminum plate as the front panel, and then there's a couple of ears that are the aluminum for the actual box that come out, and the bolts go through that too. So there's a little bit of a metal sandwich at the front on either side.
I noticed on your 5 kilowatt and 3 kilowatt models, they had the big amplifier. What is the size of the actual top unit that was in your display for power output, and how much does the amplifier do?
So the exciter controller on the top is exactly the same physical size as the 2 RU 2 kilowatt unit. It weighs a lot less because there's no power supply, or there's no power amplifier supply in there. So there's a blank there. The lower one weighs 50 pounds. It's a little bit deeper, but it's still not as deep as the VS 2.5, for instance. So at the back, there's a natural step which actually allows support for cables that are coming into the back of the exciter controller on the top, and then you've got the power, so they can kind of rest lightly on the power amplifier on the lower deck.
What is the input requirement for 5 kilowatts on the power amp section?
How do you mean?
What is the size of the little exciter unit on the top? Is it a 150? 500?
Oh, I actually don't know that one. I think that we're not really. I can look that up. I think I've got a spec sheet for that. Let me, while we do other questions, I'll have a dig around.
Thank you.
Yep.
Jeff, did you get a chance to walk around at all during the show?
So that was arguably, and I told somebody, COVID notwithstanding, this was probably my favorite NAB show out of all the ones I've been to. It was steady from the first day to 2 p.m. on the last day. I did not get a chance to walk around even the West Hall, let alone any of the other halls. It was there were no lunch breaks. It was grab a sandwich out of the fridge in the booth. Elaine says she walked about 15 miles, so she probably has a much better take on that than I do. But yeah, for us, I mean, from the time the show floor opened until the time the show floor closed, we were in front of somebody. And the cool thing was that it wasn't as crowded because the attendance was lower. So, and the West Hall, you had to want to be there because it was quite a ways away from North Central, you know, the usual areas. So it was either drive the little Teslas, which I did not do also, or a 15-minute walk over from the North Hall. So we tended to see only the people that really wanted to be over there. And it really cut down on the, what I call the tire kicker traffic. You know, the folks that are walk by. So what do you guys do? Or the marketers who are just handing out business cards or harvesting them for spam. So yeah, no, it was good like that. I was really impressed, but I did not get to see much at all other than our own little corner of the world.
Elaine, would you like to add anything to that?
Oh, I could add just a little bit to it since I did do some walking around. A large number of the exhibitors had greatly scaled back booths for the show this year. Comrex had a little 10 by 20 in the Central Hall, which was about a 20-minute walk from the Nautel booth in the West Hall. Broadcasters General Store likewise had 2 very small booths instead of their regular one. The only people who had really good full-size booths that I could see on the radio side were Nautel and Wheatstone, and everybody else was much, much smaller. And of course, Telos wasn't at the show at all. They simply had people walking around the show floor, meeting up with people. They had one person in the Nautel booth most of the show, et cetera. So it was kind of interesting that way. The video companies, of course, were crowded the whole time. I expect their incidence of COVID was even higher than the radio people. But in general, it looked like there was a good high energy level at the show. That West Hall is a long ways from anything if you are in the Central Hall. So you had to really time things and work them out. And in fact, anybody that I talked to who had business both in the Central Hall and the West Hall had to schedule it out. So those were my observations, Barry.
Well, thank you. Well, have to keep that in mind for next year, assuming that things are pretty much the same as they are now.
Oh, and I will mention too that Tesla thing between the exhibit halls was just kind of silly, because in order to ride that thing, you had to catch it from basically a parking lot and ride to another parking lot. And by the time I got out of the Tesla at the West Hall parking lot, it was about a 15-minute walk into the Nautel booth. And I said, next time I'm just going to stay in the air-conditioned hallways.
Yeah. If you want to see the brochure, the spec sheet, I've got that ready to show. If I can share my screen.
Yes, you can.
And I just got to find the right button. Oops.
It's the green one at the bottom that says share screen.
There we go. Oh, something's covering it up. There it is.
That's what happens. So when I've used the hide taskbar thing, and whenever I get a reminder pop up, I can't hide the taskbar, and all the controls in a Zoom meeting get hidden.
Share. Okay. I think this should.
Yes.
Okay, great. And I'll make that. Yeah, thank you. So this is the preliminary one, as you can tell from the big red letters that say preliminary. And this is, so this has got the basics of the feature set. Nothing really different from the other than the lower power one. This gives you a sense of the various components. You can see that the 2R unit on the top there lacks that power supply on the right-hand side. The power supplies are along the bottom. And then we've got one big grill that feeds, so that has the fans behind it. We put the fans in the front of our transmitters because that's where the cool air is coming into them. It makes the fans last longer. So they're right behind the filter, and that enables them to get cool air immediately. And then it also creates positive pressure in both boxes.
Can you categorize the sound level of these fans?
The sound level, like if you were standing right next to the VX2 at the show and I turned on the VS 300 that was about 10 or 12 feet away, you could hear the VS. No problem. So it's a lot, it's actually it's a lot less sound level, and also the pitch is a different range, so it's not as I don't think it's as interfering with general hearing and stuff like that. So
that's an important thing to mention, and Justin had covered it during the product launch too, is that it's the sound reduction has both been a matter of SPL and perceptual levels, because they selected fans that are, number one, they're variable speed, so at lower powers or when they're super cool, they run slower anyway.
Yeah,
but they don't make that high-pitched scream. And yeah, you can stand right in front of one running and actually have a conversation, where with the VS transmitters, it can be pretty darn distracting.
Yeah.
Do you think it would ever be an upgrade to the VX or the VS to change?
No, it's a whole different layout and things like that. So I don't think it's really an option to sort of retrofit a VS with fans from the VX. You know, we would have to redesign the entire cabinet. The fans on the VS are on the sides. And they just are smaller. They run at a higher speed. There's a bunch of reasons that make that.
Can you at least tell us that whoever designed that VS fan went to bed without dessert?
Yes, hopefully. Yeah, they are loud. I mean, I could turn on the one behind me right now and using my phone, and it would drown me out pretty much. We all know that.
What is the mix match ratio between the top unit and the bottom unit based on your kilowatt outputs? Or is the top unit the same for all the big ones?
Top unit's the same for all the big ones, as far as I know. I think that it just, so the variable is how much we amplify it in the bottom unit. And there's some, so that's basically how that works. It's an exciter controller.
Well, the other thing to remember.
Sorry, carry on.
Sorry, the other thing to remember, Ken, is that this is very much analog, so it's a non-linear amplifier. So we control the output power by adjusting the power supply voltage, not the drive level. The drive level will be pretty consistent regardless. It's based on number of FETs.
There you go. And I've got this up on the screen. Hopefully you can see that okay, to give you a sense of what the connections are at the back here. Other than not having the antenna connection on the back of this one, you'll see a lot of the similarity between this and the lower, the 2 kilowatt and below. I can sort of highlight some of it here. We can see the SD card. I
think if you hit F11, you'll get an expanded view.
F11 did nothing.
Oh,
do you want it to be bigger?
Yeah, usually it gives you the whole.
I can zoom it. Is that better?
Oh, go ahead. Upper right corner of your browser window. Just click.
Oh, I'm avoiding it because my can you see that okay?
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can see here the SD card slot, and it's recessed slightly, so you'd have to use some sort of plastic thing to just sort of pop it out. We didn't want it so that you can inadvertently pop out the SD card from a running transmitter, because it would stop running. The other thing we've added on the interlock is a very nice little plug that just plugs right into it, so you don't have to do any soldering and and mucking about with things. So it's a much nicer design here. There's also on the front, you'll see that there are there's a USB port on the front. So if you're doing an update to the operating system, or you want to plug some music or whatever it is that we're plugging into the unit, that you can do it from the front USB if that's more convenient for you. But there are still two on the back.
So how much power does the top unit supply to the bottom amplifier? In other words, if the top unit failed, how much input would I need to put for the RFN on the big amplifier on the bottom?
Right. That's the question I don't know the answer to, and I'm not sure if it's locked down yet, because they're still going through the design. So I
suspect you're going to find that, like any of our other current transmitters, you're not going to be plugging another exciter into it unless it's one of ours.
Right.
Because typically we've gone more to an embedded interactive design. There's a lot of feedback between the two, and there is a data connection between them.
Absolutely.
So,
the AUI has to understand everything about the amplifier as well, because
the controller is in the other unit.
Yeah.
So if any one part dies, it's basically all dead.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's pretty much the case with the VS units too. So that's not uncommon.
Yeah, and bear in mind that as I was saying when I first started talking about this unit, the reason one of the big reasons for separating them was to make them easier to put into a rack. If you were to put this whole thing into a rack, it would be like 65 pounds. But by having two separate things, it makes it a little easier.
So that would really hurt Jeff.
Yeah, exactly. He's just not strong enough.
I've lost a little weight. It helps. But other thing, Matt, if you can scroll down to the back view again, two things that are worth noting. So instead of using the onboard memory, we do use the SD card to hold the operating system, which means that you can load your operating, you can do an upgrade, you can buy another SD card and load the backup version of the OS onto that. One of the other things that changed about that is the read-write frequency. They're not like with the existing boxes, the take an NV with the CF card, for example, we're reading and writing almost constantly. On this one, it reads the operating system on power up, and then the only time it refers to the SD card is if something changes. So, number one, SD card's got a much higher life cycle of read-write than a CF card. But number two, we're referring to it a whole lot less, so it should go even longer again. The other thing that I really think is cool, and I mean, I talk as the guy that slings the wrenches, but if you look at that 1 5/8 EIA flange, and you can't see it from this picture, but if you look on the other side of the flange, what you see is a pair of Allen screws. If you undo those Allen screws, what you're looking at is a 1 5/8 piece of hardline. So it's a flangeless output. It's provided by the folks that provide the power probe. So if you're running hardline in the building, you can slap a 1 5/8 coupler and a bullet in there and just put an elbow on and transition right straight to your hardline. Take the flange totally off. So that's just another cool thing where it's a whole lot more flexible. And if you called me and said I need to field convert to a 7/8 inch or something, we don't really have plans for it, but there's no technical reason we couldn't do it.
So if you're doing an update, you can just swap SD cards, but where would your settings be stored if you did that? Like your frequency and your power outs and your screens and all that stuff.
So a lot of the stuff is stored on the SD card, but is mirrored in the RAM, and the RAM is held with it. And there's the other thing. Thanks for bringing that up, because it reminded me and I forgot to mention it. That little Cmos battery that everybody hates on the VS, it's so hard to get to. We don't have that anymore. It's a super capacitor. It'll hold the settings for 3 weeks, Matt, 24 days, 21 days, something like that.
Yeah, it should be plenty for, the what you need, and you don't have to be checking batteries.
Matt, Richard has brought back the question of the depth, rack depth for the VXs.
20 inches for the top unit, and the 2 kilowatts is 20 inches, and The lower one is the power amplifier on the 5 kilowatt is I think it's about 3 or 4 inches deeper, so 24 or something like that. So it's pretty shallow. It's shallower than the VS by a long shot. Moving around with them, you know, the VS, I can just carry a VS 300 on my fingers from the car to the house or something like that. But my fingers are screaming by the end of that. With the VX, I can tuck it under one arm, and it's really quite easy to move around.
Joel wants to know about the variable speed fan. Does it go down to 0 RPM?
No, I think when you plug them in, they're running at A speed. And that's, I'm not sure the thinking of that, but I don't believe they go to 0, but I could be wrong, but I don't think that's the case.
Typically, most of that stuff, the fan rating is 63% to 100 and something percent of nominal. And the reasoning being, as I understand it, and understand that I've not dug into it a lot, but the reasoning as I understand it is that they tend to wear more at very low velocities. And again, I'm not sure about that exactly. And keep in mind, if you're getting sub-zero, you're below operating spec for any transmitter on the market these days.
Joel, don't do that.
Well, and I've had a lot where we've plugged the transmitter in and had to put a space heater in just to keep it above freezing in some cases. So, you know, it can, or if it shuts off, then you can go below freezing in a heartbeat. So yeah, it can be a challenge in some sites.
So if your air conditioning failed, could you set this thing in a refrigerator?
Probably fit.
Just add rack rails.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically could, if it's non-condensing. Remember that 0 to 90% non-condensing is the specification. So you'd want to have a humidity controlled refrigerator. Now, having said that, I mean, my Samsung upstairs will send me a text if the humidity goes above 50% or if the temperature goes above X whatever degrees I set it to. So it's very busy. You know, the cool thing is I can log into it from Vegas and make sure that the boy didn't leave the door open, or it'll send me an alarm if he did. But, you know, at that point, it's like, yeah, hey, shut the damn fridge door. First time that happened, my wife got a little concerned.
Yeah. I get tests from our Samsung washing machine. So, yeah, I can relate.
Yeah, Bill's got a good point. If you put the transmitter in the fridge, where does the beer go?
Well,
we've got to prioritize.
It's not that many RUs, so you can stay, you know, if it's a decent sized fridge. If it was a European fridge, I see the problem, but in a North American fridge, it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, you need one with a French door.
Yeah.
I thought the tap was on the front of the transmitter.
No, these transmitters aren't big enough. They'll only hold about the equivalent of a 6-pack. So, you know, if you want a proper keg, you need to go for a bigger box.
Exactly. Go with an Envy Light.
Thank you, Elaine.
I told Matt, I said, yeah, we'll bring you in. We'll keep you for a couple of minutes and then you can bugger off and go do other stuff. And we're to the top of the hour and he's still talking.
I wasn't watching the chat, so I just seen Elaine's comment. So the conversation has degraded quickly. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate all this information about the AUI and the VX series. I think the NAB show had a lot to offer on one level, as you say, the support people being available and identified by color. That I think was a great thing. Several people mentioned that to me, that they were able to make contact and visit with people that they otherwise would not necessarily have gotten to know. And so that's good.
Marty had asked, when the AUI comes out for the GB series, will the audio driver issue be resolved or will the shoutcast feature go away? And I can answer that because I've already put Matt on notice for my station. So the first iteration, it will go away, but I've already told them, you know, we won't be upgrading the AUI on my VS until I've got the audio player back. So, yep, it's coming, but it'll be a while. Is that fair, Matt?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I actually, in terms of solving it the way that it's solved on a VS today, I can't make that promise. It's writing kernel level drivers for audio, for writing a kernel level audio driver for the version of Linux is an incredibly hard thing to do. So we may have to solve the problem a different way. On the GV, that's not a problem because it's running on an SBC, which it's easier to have audio drivers. So I've checked on that. So the GV series should not have that problem. But on the VSs, that is a problem. And the VX will have an audio player. So we're committed that way. It's the VS. The hardware is really, really tough to work with because it's, as I like to point out when I'm doing demos, it's, the VS and the AUI came out when Breaking Bad was in season 1. And, that's a long time ago.
So what you're saying is you haven't got the blue crystal version of the audio driver yet.
The blue, yeah, exactly.
Sorry, my wife made me sit through all 8 seasons or 10 seasons or however many seasons.
It's still going.
A while ago.
Yeah. Anyway, that is the challenge. And what I've said in demos recently is been very upfront about the fact that we have a problem with that. And ironically, most of the people I spoke to at the show, they didn't care because they didn't use it. It's clearly an issue for people like yourself, Jeff, who do depend on it, and that's either their backup or they use it for streaming or something like that. So it's not a good thing to lose, and we know that. We have poured actually a huge amount of effort into trying to write an audio driver for it, and we will continue to do that. But we're also looking at alternative ways to solve the problem so that we can have some way to have audio of that type coming into the transmitter. Any other questions?
That was your moment of silence. So there you go.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing unless anyone's got any other questions about the 5 kilowatt.
The backup audio didn't start on the silence.
Yeah.
We set the delay pretty long because we like to have that period of quiet time.
Go buy lottery tickets. Matt Herdon and Jeff Welton were silent at the same time. That is just crazy.
Rare.
The chances of that are 0. Yeah.
Well, obviously they're not 0 because it happened, but based on the law of statistics, that means it won't happen again for several years.
At least, yeah.
So the only other really cool thing about NAB from our perspective, and I mean, there were a lot of cool things at NAB, but we let Matt take up the whole hour and change. But Philip had for anybody into HD radio, we're playing with a lot of virtualization, and Philip had a good demo with a virtualized Omnia 9 running in a so we virtualized the entire HD chain from the processor all the way to the transmitter, not including the transmitter because haven't figured out how to virtualize that 1,000-foot stick yet. Someday maybe. But the cool thing about it is, so we're able to run we can generate the whole HD signal from a server on wherever. I mean, we ran it on Amazon Web Services plus a hardware box in the booth. Did all the processing, there is no time delay or time alignment issue because we break the signal apart in the virtualized world, reconnect it in the virtualized world. So we totally eliminate the need for time delay correction, which was way cool. But that was something that we're playing with that you'll see more of. And it's one of those things. I do a lot of topics on virtualization because whether you're an old school, I love my Arrakis DL boards, or a newer, everything should be virtual and I can touch screen everything. There's going to be some level of it coming to us one way or another. And it is something that we do need to kind of be aware of.
Do
That
you
might be
plan
a-
on stacking these things to make it more powerful in the future?
Can't tell you what we're going to do next year.
You're talking about the 5 kilowatt again?
Yeah, maybe making a 10 or something.
Yeah, anything's possible, but at this point, you know, we're focused entirely on this one. So, and we're not being coy. We're just saying, no, we're not thinking about it right now. And if that was a sensible thing to do, we would probably come around and take a look at that. But the guys are deep into this one, and we're taking, you know, each power level is a project unto itself, and we're deep into this one, and we're obviously wrapping up the 2 kilowatt level and below. Yeah, so you know, we'll see what this lends itself to, but you know, we can't predict that at this point.
Oh, one other thing while I'm thinking about it, Barry opened up talking about the folks at Kintronic, and one of the things I didn't hear, they also make ISO coils and ISO couplers for putting your FM on your AM tower, and that bears mention because they're not a bad little product.
That's a good deal. And also, obviously, skirts and things like that have become very common. A lot of stations have used the skirting to attach another station to a tower. Ken?
That's a pretty cool unit. I didn't go to the show, so this is the first I've seen of it, except, you know, just wandering on the internet. And that's pretty neat boxes you've got there.
But you used a skirt to attach a second transmitter.
Oh yeah, that was to detune when we went from 3 tower directional to 1 tower non-D day and night. We used the north tower to put some cellular stuff on, and so we had to make it invisible to the south tower to keep it non-D, so we put a skirt on it, or a folded unipole that made it invisible.
And we have a little story that Ken did, and Jim Sanford helping.
Yeah, we took our daytime that was 5 kilowatts and our nighttime that was 500 and decided it was shooting out into the mountains, the southern mountains of Roswell, New Mexico, where there is nothing but rattlesnakes and a few cows. And so
what about the aliens?
Yes. And so we made it non-D because the station could make more money leasing the North Tower to AT&T to put a lot of new cellular stuff on. So
you're number one with the Martians.
That's right.
So what did the nighttime power go from and to?
It went from 490 something watts to 38 watts. And it covers Roswell just fine. And everybody's listening to the translator anyway. So. And
Funny thing about that, I had one customer decide he was going to flip his AM to all digital because he thought everybody was listening to the translator, and he discovered when the phones lit up the day he made the change that was not the case. So, you know, that was a unique surprise. I've seen it go both ways.
Yeah, I've heard that. This one though, you know, it was off the air for 2 days, and this was before I took over that station, and nobody knew. So, and they've changed the format 3 times since then. So I think the listener probably changed channels. It's got a Nautel XR 6.
Okay. Yeah.
The old 3-phase model they don't make anymore, but
Yep. And we can still build the XRs, except now we build them single phase only, and if you want 3-phase, we'll give you the newer NX series. But
that's what I put in Hobbs. That's quite a transmitter.
Yep, I remember we've talked about that. On that note, I've got to dust out, but Barry, thanks for having me.
Well, Jeff, thank you. Appreciate your expertise as always, Matt. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us.
You're welcome. And
Thanks, guys.
as always, if there's any other questions, forward them along. And I'm glad I can make it today. Thanks, Jeff, for reaching out.
Send
Thanks
us
for
a time schedule for the releases.
Well, my hope is that I get to while I was on this call, I had some good news about the beta QA process. So I expect the 2.1 beta for VS to be out. I hope to make an announcement next week, and then we'll follow that up with a beta 3, which will be the kind of the release candidate where we test the final QA. But as I say, I'm very, very happy with the stability and the way it's working. So
Excellent.
it's come a long way. It kind of paused a little bit during, well, we weren't there for the developers while we were at NAB, because the Cameron, who's the developer lead, he was down in Vegas as well to be on the show floor and answer questions. So that was good, but it did take the pressure off a little bit.
Very good. Excellent.
Okie doke. I'm gonna thank you, bid you adieu, and as I say, if you got questions, send them along.
Matt.Herdon at Nautel.com.
There you go.
Take care,
All right,
guys.
I gotta sleep.
Okay.
See you all later.
See you later. Bye. Have a good one.